Jet 250A. Stage for PD.
Started out as a flight attendant back when he was 19.
I was the best at pouring orange juice at 30,000 feet in heavy turbulence.
I was scared of change, knowing nothing would be the same.
She's like, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. I've been a nurse for 35 years. I've never done it that way, and I'm not going to even start doing it that way. I'm just going to be a nurse.
You're listening to the Rural Medic Podcast, a place where EMS stories are shared, knowledge is passed along, and tales from the field come alive like a diabetic after oral glucose. Grab a coffee, settle in, and enjoy.
So since this is our first episode, we need to take the time to discuss who we are and introduce ourselves. So I will let Amanda go first, since chivalry is not dead.
I'm Amanda, and I don't know what to say about myself.
Okay, let's do this a little different. Let's describe each other. So Amanda bore 4 children prior to attending college. It wasn't all her fault. Obviously, I had a say in it. And we made some poor choices as far as family planning and education, and we did everything opposite of what normal people do, or the status quo. She decided to go to CNA school to get her feet wet after her brother passed, which basically pushed her even further. She always knew that she wanted to do something healthcare related as a youngin', but that was ultimately with her brother's passing at a young age and having to be the primary POA and all that good stuff really pushed her into CNA school. From there, she realized that CNA wages were not nearly enough for 4 children, so she decided to go to LPN school and nursing school. No.
That is not the right.
You already said, this is my perspective of your story.
Okay.
You'll have a chance in the bio section of the website to properly outline it in chronological order. LPN school, did that for a while. It's been on the waiting list for nursing school for years. Finally just finished her bachelor's of nursing. Passed the NCLEX after 7 attempts.
That is a lie.
Numerous stressors in her life, then she finally made it through. And now she's got her sights set on doctorate of nurse practitioner. And this is going to be fun when you start talking about me, because I've already done it. So now you can get ultimate revenge with your perspective of my biography. Works in a local level 3 trauma, rural ER. And that's basically where we're at. We've got some things on the horizon that are exciting, promising, and a pay cut. But what's life without challenges? We've always done things against the grain or the status quo.
Sure have.
With that said, without further ado,
We're going to introduce you. Chris started out as a flight attendant back when he was 19, and then he met his wife.
can I just really quick? So I was the best at pouring orange juice at 30,000 feet in heavy turbulence.
Oh my
The
gosh.
only thing that saved me was my dark colored tie that essentially you could wring out after every flight and have a half cup of coffee. If it wasn't for that tie, my shirt would have been just trashed. But yes, best orange juice Poirier at 30,000 feet. Continue.
He had aspirations of becoming a pilot, and when him and I were in a relationship, I was like, I don't really want to be married to somebody who's away from home all the time. I always wanted to have a family and have kids, and I knew that they'd miss their dad. And with somebody who didn't really have their dad around all the time, I really didn't want that for them. So with jumps and hurdles, moving us to Arizona shortly after we were married, when I believe you were 21. No, I was 21. You were 23.
23 and about 50 pounds lighter.
And started
And
a
handsome.
week before we moved, started a business.
Very handsome.
Yeah. And we took that out to Arizona. We were both on unemployment. We didn't see where we lived. And we ran a company for about 7 years. He did odds and ends jobs. And my brother is what took us out there. He had cancer, and I was his power of attorney, took over things. And when he passed away, my husband was like, well, what is life? What should I be doing? I think being a garbage man would be cool.
Always
And
wanted to be. You can ask my mom. Garbage man was my initial passion at 3.
and that was like, nah. And he was like, I really feel like I need to help people and I should become a police officer. And he toyed with that idea, and that didn't really sit well. And he was like, I don't think I could pass the fitness test.
The vertical jump was my concern.
And then was like, you know what? I'm going to look into being an EMT paramedic kind of thing. And he became an EMT, and he was working at a behavioral health unit, became a supervisor, and was like, you know what? I want to go on a truck. I need to be a paramedic. And he is one that likes to be in charge. So
If you could see my facial expressions, it would be even more entertaining. So the thing that about what you just said about me really makes me question how close I've been paying attention to you over the last 14 years, because that was pretty accurate.
well, you ended up graduating paramedic school in 2018. And we cheered you on as you walked across the stage, and you were working on a sleepy part of town and wanted to get some a good experience in the metropolitan area. And you took a jump for that and worked there for a couple of years. And now in the rural paramedicine, we had a big move a year and a half ago. So it was just kind of a forced issue, kind of put us in a pinch, but it's a great experience.
Absolutely. And life's all about taking lemons and making lemonade. The trick is you need a bag of sugar, because just the lemons with the lemon water, and it's no good.
Isn't that where our kids come into play?
Oh, yeah. Sweet as sugar. So here we are. We've pondered putting together a podcast, offered to co-host and try and keep me in line with some of her tips, comments, and expertise in the nursing subject matter. And it'll be a good perspective. Here we go. We're going to be talking about status quo and how we can identify it and combat it, because in rural America, status quo is the archnemesis of progression in medicine. And I feel like it's something that needs to be addressed, and something I've really come to learn and see and experience firsthand moving to this particular neck of the cornfield. When I say status quo, what comes to mind? Anything in particular? Any examples?
Me and my mops. Like, I went through 4 mops to find the one I finally like, and I'm never going to get rid of that brand. I will probably always buy that brand.
And you want to know how we know that she likes this mop? We've literally bought 3 in the last month because our daughter's broke 2, and she refuses to go with any other mop. And now, mind you, she was anti-mop for a while. She bought this fancy floor sweeper, vacuum mopper,
All in one.
And she's like, I don't like normal mops. All they do is just move the debris and the bacteria around. And then I found one, I brought it home, and I actually mopped the floor, which I think is more
appealing.
Yeah. She definitely has a very status quo approach to her mop selection. When we actually look at the definition of status quo, it is basically a state of being in which things are. And if you were to take your current situation and the way things are around you in the world and put them on a piece of paper, that would be status quo. It is a cognitive bias that we experience that can prevent us from progressing in every facet of life, regardless of whether or not you're a paramedic. However, in the medical field, I feel like it's something that we definitely need to learn more about and address as we move towards a better system.
Absolutely.
Especially in EMS. Hospital environments, they have their own issues. I can't really address those, but the way EMS is now is not sustainable. You see EMS agencies folding up every day, being bought out, going out of business, can't find volunteers. There's a lot, and it's basically been the same status quo since it was in the 70s when they first started EMS. In Arizona, we had protocols that were a little more progressive than where I'm at now. The reasons behind why they're not as progressive here, there are probably many, and we're not here to address that. But we had a patient the other day that was AFib, RVR, stable, mentating appropriately, blood pressure was holding. And in Michigan, it is essentially monitor, supportive therapy, and if things really start to go south, electrical therapy. I don't know if anyone's ever had a pacer or pads put on their chest and been defibrillated, but electrical therapy is not very good for the patient. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's painful.
Not only that, but I mean, putting energy through somebody's heart tissue probably isn't good. But I mean, that's simply.
No, it's simply the last resort.
So I went up to the doctor. I was transferring care. Younger guy in the ER. I was like, okay, this guy's got potential. He's young. He's probably wanting to,
Make things better in the
be
world.
progressive. And I asked him about it, and he says, yeah, it's a good idea, but I don't think we're gonna be able to do it. He started talking about all the contraindications and how we could screw it up. And I talked about Wolff Parkinson's White, which is a contraindication for our calcium channel blockers, in an attempt to gain some sort of credibility in the conversation, but he was very quick to shut it down. And that ultimately, that coupled with some of my managerial issues that I've experienced recently at various agencies, really opened up the door into why. Like, why did he just shut me down like that? Why not investigate?
Or think of something else to say. I mean, there's a way of, shutting people down, and that can be, more respectable. But to just like auto tune it out, like you're not even going to give a second thought about it is pretty substantial, that everything is just okay in the status quo. Like we've been doing it this way for a long time, and, we're not going to change it.
And obviously, there are multiple facets to the issue. There could be a personal issue that he's experienced with the particular drug. Maybe when he was in med school, he gave it to somebody with Parkinson's White, and it killed him.
It could be.
It could be a system issue. I know that cardizam is hard to keep in the field because it expires very rapidly, and it's not really. I don't really know about the money breakdown, but unless it's reconstituted, the shelf life in the field is very, very poor. So,
But see, when I think about that, whenever you return your, like you always are going to the hospital and switching out your med box and that could be something that could be monitored every time you do go there. Like, and you don't just go there once a shift. Sometimes you go there, multiple times and whatnot.
I prefer to go there once a shift.
You do?
Yeah.
But you still work 2 days a week, on your 24-hour shifts. Then you have your whole team that does it. And what is it to just take a quick peek knowing that that is a rapid drug that expires frequently? Then why not just take a quick peek of like, hey, this probably wasn't done. And, you always have a checklist and everything. So if that's a process thing, that's just something you need to educate people on.
And if we can do it in Arizona, we can do it in Michigan. In Arizona, there is no. The way it works here in Michigan is you take your drug box to a central pharmacy, whether it be your hospital or there's no. You can get drugs wherever you go. In Arizona, you basically walk up to the pharmacy counter and you say, "Hey, I need this," and they give it to you, and you go put it back in your drug box. Here, they have a label on the drug box where the pharmacist that packs the drug box actually puts the expiration date of the earliest expiring drug in the drug box on the outside. So it's very easy to manage expired drugs. In Arizona, if medics didn't check the box, they would be expired, and you would get on a call and you do your 5-patient rights and you'd be like, ugh. Or you would check your drug box every shift and not have to go, ugh, 5-patient rights, right?
And that's what a good medic does.
Absolutely. So if they can do it out there, we can do it here. But it was frustrating. With that in mind, so let's say this particular doctor had an incident when he was a resident at the local hospital. It's a teaching hospital where he gave somebody cardizam with Wolff Parkinson's White and killed them.
Which is a big contraindicator.
And it was a 12-year-old. So, I mean, that was a tough death for him to eat, right? So he has this innate fear inside of him of doing that again, which is rightfully so. However, fear is 2 times more psychologically impactful than the potential gain of a positive outcome. So right off the bat, without that incident of the 12-year-old boy that he killed, which for full disclosure, I don't think this man killed a 12-year-old boy, but it's an example. We are fundamentally flawed as humans to be fearful, I guess, if you think of it in
Of
that.
change.
Of pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's like an innate survival of the fittest from back when we lived in tribes and had to survive, right? If we didn't have fear, or our fear wasn't as great as our risk taking, we wouldn't survive as a species.
Mm-hmm.
However, in modern age, we don't necessarily have to worry about the lion coming into the backyard and having to run away. So we shouldn't really be a 2-for-1 fear versus gains.
Well,
Like,
there's a huge like different, having a lion in your backyard and you're standing face to face with it, that would be more something of like having a fear of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to kill anybody. Like cardizem can't be in the field because people don't know how to use it right, or medical providers don't know how to use it right.
But we still carry these psychological issues and survival mechanisms from back when we were cave dwellers.
Right. But that's a huge thing. It's not like it's a small thing, like changing a mop and, spending $20. That's super minute compared to, somebody who is like, oh my gosh, like we've had too many people in the field use this drug and it went south. And if that would be the case, that's something that needs to be looked at and researched.
And that's hard data too.
Yeah.
Which is different than just blind fear.
Right. And so if you are like, it's different too if it's like working on plumbing, which we absolutely hate, and saying, I did it this first way. I'm not even going to attempt to do it again. I'm just going to pay somebody else because I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up again. I put a lot of money into this, $200, pipes exploded and whatnot. Not wanting to move out of your comfort zone. The risk versus benefit always has to be played when you're doing something. So if like in the cardizem incidents, you would sit down and look at the hard data, like what was the reason that you got rid of the cardizem in the field? Is it because too many people were using it wrong and it was an education issue? Or was it people didn't care and they weren't being fired?
Well, in this case, there's never been cardizem.
Never in the field. Well, that's a whole nother issue.
But
it's
other
like if you're not
systems are
willing to
using it.
do right. So if other systems are using it and you know that 9 times out of 10, giving cardizem to a patient in the field will save them if you're administering it 30 minutes prior to coming to the hospital. 30 minutes is just a number. It's not like data. But if that's what's going to save them from going into VTAC or VFib, and you don't have to ultimately shock them as the last resort, that hard data is needed to be able to come into the field, that medicine into the field. Realistically, it full circles back to where you're talking to somebody about it, they shut you down because it doesn't matter to them. I'm doing what I'm doing. It's been this way forever, like the status quo. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing because it's not important to me, even though it's important to you.
It's like the old adage with the fire department. When I was in medic school, the firefighter looked at me. He said, we have a very big problem in the fire industry. We have an issue with this is how it's been done, and this is how we're going to continue to do it. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Well, I had a nurse when I was first in LPN. I had a nurse that was a nurse for 35 years. We were talking about the glucometer checks and how evidence-based research says you rub their finger with a swab, then you wipe away the first one, the first drop of blood that you take, because it's full of the alcohol that's on the finger.
Mm-hmm. And everyone knows that alcoholics usually have high blood sugars.
Yeah, and
so there's
alcohol
probably sugar
has
in there.
Sugar in it. So it'll skew the results of the blood glucose. I'm not sure what that number is, but, it could be, like from what I've seen, it could go 20.
Regardless, it's not accurate.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just based on actual evidence-based research. It's already been sought out. I was telling her about it because she doesn't do it. And I was like, hey, did you know evidence-based research says that, this? I didn't talk to her in a condescending manner. She's like, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. I've been a nurse for 35 years. I've never done it that way, and I'm not going to even start doing it that way. I'm just going to be a nurse.
Because that's the nurse I want.
No. The nursing process is always changing. Medicine is always changing. It's not just nurses, it's doctors. And even, the coronavirus, that was something that came out, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, this new disease, and that's killing everybody. And we had the flu pandemic back when, and it was the same thing. Oh my gosh, here's something new. And how do we deal with this?
Yeah, constant change and progression, especially in certain industries, aviation, medicine, definitely the archnemesis. And without critically thinking and overcoming your status quo biases, very dangerous. We were always told in school, it was drilled in our heads that the moment you graduate, new medicine's going to be out there and the next class is going to know something that you didn't.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
Give me a genre.
A genre? We go with, I know you don't like Italian that
Let's go with
much.
Mancino's. Mancino's is one of our local, they call them, I think, grinders here.
Yeah, grinders,
which is weird. But
sandwiches.
yeah, it's like a sub sandwich, delicious. I always get steak. What is it? The cowboy steak with extra jalapenos.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we lived in Arizona 12 years. I brought some things back to Michigan. I refuse to drink Vernors, but I will enjoy extra jalapeno. Okay, so yeah, so that's my favorite.
So saying that, how many times do you go to Mancino's and order just that?
100%.
100%. You never change them. Why don't you change?
Oh, I would change if they were out of those particular grinders.
So only if you knew those, but you know that they always sell them every time you go in.
Honestly, I don't know if I would change. I think I would leave.
You would just leave and not be a
and
customer
go
anymore?
somewhere. No, I would come back when they had it in stock, but I don't know if I would venture off into something else. I might just go somewhere else
But why is that?
because I really, really, really enjoy the cowboy steak with jalapenos.
Do you have a fear that if you order something else, it's going to be bad and you just wasted all of your money?
I have a fear that they're going to put lettuce on it. So yes, absolutely. That innate fear is a great example of 2-to-1 psychological ratio of pain over gain. I am 2 times more likely to be more afraid of them putting lettuce on this cowboy grinder with jalapenos than I am the potential gain of maybe enjoying the lettuce today.
Let's get you on another example. If you had an opportunity to change the sliding back door,
So we're going through a remodel. We bought this house from my grandma who passed. That's what landed me back in my hometown, to which I never thought or even desired to ever return to. But anyways, so we have a very, 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 very old sliding glass door. I think some of my fingerprints from my childhood are still on it.
no.
But what about it? Go ahead.
So if you had to install that yourself, you couldn't have an installer. Your choices were to either keep that door the way it is, or you have a free, brand new door that Home Depot was to deliver to you for free, but you had to install it.
I don't think this is a good example.
This
Do you
is
wanna-
a great example because I already know what you're going to say.
I'm going to say
I don't want to do that. I'm afraid I'm going to break it. Our house would be exposed.
you'd want to do it in
and-
the summer, absolutely, because there's going to be a hole in the side of the house until I watch enough YouTube videos to figure it out.
And see, that's your fear. You'd rather stay with this door and keep it because you know that there's no drafts. It's already in place. You don't have to do any of the woodwork, the trimming around it, the track.
There is very drafty, but the rest of that statement was accurate.
But you'd rather keep that in place because it's not a problem right now versus it's going to be a huge problem because you don't know how to put that door in. It'd be a huge problem and a huge fear of like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. I don't even know where I'd start except for YouTube videos. And who knows, if I watch YouTube videos, I might not be able to do it.
Yeah.
So for me, that is a huge thing. It's like a loss aversion, status quo kind of thing mixed in one. Is you want to keep that door because nothing's wrong with it. It's fine right now. Yeah, I'd love to have a new one, but I'd rather have somebody put it in. But since I can't, I would just have myself put it in. So,
Yeah.
but I'm going to lose if I mess it up.
Big
So why
Not
would I
I-
mess with
not-
it until I could just have somebody else do it?
Not only am I going to lose, but the whole family's going to lose because there's going to be mosquitoes in the house. and
Yeah, it could be a huge thing.
yeah, we were thinking about doing it. I'm like, you know what? I could do this. I pulled up YouTube, spent about 35 seconds on a video, and was like, no. I'm glad you exposed my weakness, though, installing sliders. But I can innovate pretty well, I think.
You are very innovative and very helpful.
Innovate, but I appreciate the compliment.
What?
I said innovate, not
Oh,
But I
innovate.
appreciate the compliment.
Yeah, you can innovate.
Status quo is basically how it progresses along the line of time is called inertia. When you think of Sir Isaac Newton dropping his apple with the laws of physics, the object of motion stays in motion unless it's acted upon by a force greater or equal to. So you have the way things are progressing along the linear time scale of years, months, days, seconds. That inertia that's associated with status quo remains unchanged unless acted upon by a force, and that force would be changed. And then that change results in a new status quo. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Very philosophical, but definitely needs to be addressed so we can get a better understanding of what it actually is. It's hard sometimes with things that aren't tangible. What is the most important meal of the day?
Breakfast, of course.
Why?
Just because it gets you going in the morning.
Gets you going. Nothing gets you going more than that 55 grams of sugar and smacks.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll go ahead and add on 12 more grams of sugar with the whole milk. How about that? That nothing gets you going.
How about just some marshmallows and Lucky Charms?
What are this? So obviously Amanda's a nurse, so she's a little more educated when it comes to.
Nutrition.
I love how when I have a gap, she's just gonna start filling in everything, nutrition, life. bills, finances. The cells that create insulin in the pancreas.
Langerhans.
Yeah. Okay. So those cells, if anyone knows the answer,
Go ahead and throw it out there. I'm drawing
yeah,
a blank.
at the rural medic. So that's what the bowl of cereal fires up. I don't know about anything else, but if that's what you're going for in the morning with your breakfast cereal, then that's
It's just the sugar. It makes your endorphins go crazy.
sugar is a drug. I remember our little boy would find a quarter. We'd go into Walmart with him, and he would run as fast as he can to the machine, the candy machine, with this quarter, and he's frantically trying to get this quarter in the machine. The machine handle twisted, and the 7 or 8 that fall on the floor, and the rest that fall into his hand of M&Ms before we make it from the first door at Walmart to the second door at Walmart. And that's the example I use every time someone's like, "Oh, sugar's not bad." No, sugar is dope. Look at my children. Look at your children. Nonetheless, we've all heard that. The status quo is eat your breakfast in the morning. It's the most important meal. You take your kids to school, your teachers are going to say it. It's just right. It's just in our blood. Actually, it was created by Kellogg's company when they created cereal in an attempt to get people to buy it. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
So now we have a status quo, which is probably contributing to our type 2 diabetes problem in this country, that is based on nothing more than a marketing campaign.
No scientific evidence behind it.
That was kind of interesting when I was doing my research on this episode.
Well, it's like one of those marketing tools they use to play on your emotions. If it's the most important meal of the day, and oh my gosh, I've got to be the healthiest, I've got to be that person that does everything right so I can live the longest and I could be the healthiest, then I obviously have to have that most important meal of the day.
Yeah, the ethos, pathos, ways that marketing companies play on your emotions, whether it be image, sex, emotion. So the fuzzy puppy always sells.
Oh, yeah.
Fuzzy puppy. Speaking of that, we have 2 baby black labs that may be whimpering in the background from time to time since we are in our rural medic kitchen, living room, dining room, studios, sponsored by Home Depot.
No. I wish.
Right. Cognitive bias. So status quo is a cognitive bias. So now that we have an idea of some examples and the actual breakdown of status quo, we need to figure out why we think that way and what we can do in the future to prevent ourselves from thinking that way.
I think you already touched on one of it is just that loss aversion. What is that risk versus benefit? And I'm afraid that the risk is too big, even if I don't even know the scientific evidence behind it.
Yeah, and I think the loss aversion thing too that you just mentioned, like don't just have blind fear. Identify where your fear is stemming from and address it and make the change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just being afraid is not enough, especially in an industry where we're trying to do what's best for my mom and your grandmother. Bless her heart. Man, I can't stop thinking about this Cowboy steak grinder. You got me going on that one. When we make decisions with our frontal lobe, right? That's the main part of our brain that is the decision-making center.
Mm-hmm.
On a subconscious level, the fear of loss and the biases associated regarding past experiences is something that we're going to talk about. When you're a kid and you walk up and you put your hand on the stove, it's hot.
Right.
The next decision you make, you're not going to put your hand on the stove because it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So digging deeper into that, there was a study that was conducted, and we'll put this in the show notes for reference, with patients that were diagnosed with arthritis. So in this particular study that they conducted, were provided conflicting information. So you go to the doctor, you get your medicine for arthritis, doctor says, with food. You go get it up, pick up your prescription from the pharmacy, sign the paperwork at Walgreens, and they say no food. So in this particular case, they found that patients overwhelmingly decided to take their medicine with food, contrary to the conflicted information they received based upon past experience.
And where was the past experience from, though?
Other medications they take with food. And generally speaking, you think you should take medicine with food, right? You've heard that.
Yeah, so you don't get an upset stomach or whatnot. But there are, like, sucralfate. You have to take that on an empty stomach because it coats the lining of your stomach.
But when given conflicting information, so they can't quite make a good decision or an informed decision,
Mm-hmm.
they rely on their past experience to make a decision, which I think is the ultimate takeaway from that particular study, which was very interesting because we can apply that to status quo. So this is how we've always done it. I've never been bitten by it, so this is how I'm going to continue to do it. A good example would be lift assists. So you get a call for a lift assist.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's just they're on the floor. They're always on the floor. That's how it was in the past. That's how it was tomorrow, or how it's going to be tomorrow. Just another lift assist. And then you get there and you find the patient apneic and pulseless.
That's no good.
Yeah, no, that's
You
all.
can't always assume going on a call that once you hear a lift assist that it's just a lift assist. Did
Some-
they hit their head? Did they go unconscious?
Yeah, it's almost like a psychological conditioning, and it's called representativeness heuristics, which is like a deep psychological process that our frontal lobe uses to make quick decisions, but are often inaccurate based on past experience.
Oh, wow.
Thought-provoking thing to think about when it comes to our decision-making processes with regards to status quo, because that particular tool that our mind has developed over the ages to make quick, inaccurate decisions, well, I shouldn't say they're always inaccurate, right? But they can be because you're not taking in all the information or all the data that you need.
So is it kind of like a cry wolf so many times kind of thing?
Not necessarily. It could be with anything. It could be good or bad. Why do I always get the cowboy steak?
Because it's good.
Good. So my mind makes that quick decision when I get there with what I know.
Yeah.
But it can also be bad if we don't recognize it in certain situations.
Like your lift assist where, finally a patient did, hit their head or whatnot and they're unconscious and it's not just the same old, same old. And now because you took your time or, you didn't treat it as an emergent situation due to a lack of knowledge and just what you know prior, we're just going to help her off the floor or him off the floor.
Yeah,
Now you've got a deadly situation.
absolutely. And here's a good example. So I'm going to read you this passage, and I want you to tell me what you think the answer is. So close your eyes.
Okay.
If you're listening to the podcast, close your eyes unless you're driving. Continue driving and just imagine you're going to a scene. You find a man who is just unkept. He's wearing dirty clothes. It's at the county park. There's a shopping cart next to him full of cans. He's wearing like 3 layers of clothing, and he's slurring his speech, and he's slightly confused. You have 2 choices. Is this man homeless, or is this man a homeless alcoholic?
Are those cans in the cart?
Nope. Can't
Alcohol
ask any
cans?
follow-up questions. I
Okay.
want the initial gut,
I would automatically think it's a homeless alcoholic.
because that particular picture that I painted and your past experience leads you to believe, well, that's got to be it, right? Because, I mean,
It's a typical thing seen.
right. Well, statistically, are there more homeless people or are there more homeless alcoholics?
That I don't know.
Well, I happen to have the answer.
What is that answer?
There are more homeless people than there are homeless alcoholics.
Okay.
So you just used your past experience to make a judgment call on a patient when it's statistically less likely because it's a smaller demographic,
Because I went based on the status quo of
what you are used to.
what I'm used to seeing and putting 2 and 2 together.
And
Gosh, that would be a dangerous thing if I was a police officer.
that's a dangerous thing anywhere,
Yeah.
anytime, any profession, whether you're a 3-year-old on your mom's window aspiring to be a garbage man one day, or an airline pilot or a rocket scientist or whatever.
Yeah. But as a nurse, though, if he was slurring his speech and all that and stuff, we do have to check the glucose and, make sure it's not stroke like symptoms and stuff like that. But if it was just me on my any day, every day, I'm at the park with my kids kind of thing, yeah, I would have, I don't want to say a biased opinion, but maybe that
But it
status
is.
quo. It is, I guess. But just the status quo of what I know, what I've seen, here it goes again kind of thing. But at the same time, with who I am as a person and as a nurse, I would definitely be like, how can I help?
Yeah, and I mean, I've asked people at my station, I've asked all kinds of people, and everyone wants to know more. Like, you even tried. Well, what kind of cans are they?
Yeah.
Is he wearing 3 T-shirts, or does he have 4 coats on? Like, that's just who we are as medical professionals. But
Yeah.
just given that, your initial gut reaction, that quick frontal lobe reactionary based on past experience, representativeness heuristic,
Right.
leads you to pick a statistically less likely outcome. Because only 38% of homeless people are alcoholics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really, really cool. That whole scenario, when I was doing research for the episode, took me like 8 hours to come up with. Because I tried to apply it to lift assists because I have a passion for people that don't treat lift assists with care or purpose.
Like a purposeful lift assist that there could be more meaning behind it, or they're not asking the relevant questions to
Or
see.
just treat it as she just needs help up off the ground.
Yeah.
When realistically, if you look at patient outcomes over 14 days post-fall, which technically a lift assist is somebody, unless they're on the toilet or in bed, and most of them are on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Normal people don't go on the ground and then can't get up,
Right.
typically. So, I mean, it's usually an indicator of something more. And I think people, this was the other thing that inspired me other than the cart exam, was people treat lift assists like they're just another lift assist. And the
Like an
static-
everyday occurrence,
and
it's
the
no big deal.
Do we necessarily need to go lights and sirens? That's a whole nother topic. I've had some issues at my current job where I have a tendency to treat patients that call 911 that don't give us any information, like a critical call. Obviously, I'm not driving recklessly and such, but a little different than the status quo. So this next example is going to be something that if you want to do it on your own, you're going to have to go to the website, ruralmedic.org, to see the actual image. But essentially, you have a pattern. You have a pattern that goes on endlessly, so it's infinite. Roughly 66% of the time, the pattern contains a green dot. It's basically a red, blue, green pattern. 66% of the time, it's green. So if you see a pattern, it's a red dot, a blue dot, a green dot. What color's next? What color are you going to choose?
I would have like if I was going based on a pattern. Well, you said 66%. If you wouldn't have said 66%, I would have said red. But if 66% is more than half and there's 3, I would have said a green.
Right. Most people would choose red just instinctively without really critically thinking.
Yeah.
Because I definitely did make a very strong point that 66% of the infinite pattern is green.
Yeah.
Another kind of a neat example of how our brains are programmed to quickly make decisions, which can often be inaccurate.
Well, it's just like those little things that you do as an elementary student, and they're teaching pattern colors to my first grader of blue, green, red, blue, green, red, what comes next? You know, so you're going with that, or even like the notes on a piano, you know, like you know what's going to come next, especially after you hear the song for so long, so many times. Like you already know what the next course is.
Yeah, loss aversion and representativeness heuristics are essentially built-in preservation methods that we've developed over time since the beginning of humanity that our brain uses to keep us out of trouble. So we can't necessarily fault humanity for having these built-in mechanisms for self-preservation and reproduction and carrying on the species, but in certain situations, such as the medical profession, I feel if you have an understanding of how that works, you can make better choices in the future.
Yeah, you can make that change. And I kind of just wonder, like, at what percentage, which I'd probably never know it on paper, but what percentage of it is just laziness of like, I just don't want to do it. I just don't.
Yeah, the laziness is a big problem, especially in EMS. We have a lot of people that feel like the goal is to get back in the recliner, right?
I think it's just difficult for us as people because we are we are crazy when it comes to like our lifespan, you know, being, you know, young 21-year-olds moving 2,000 miles away, selling all of our stuff and moving across the country. You do that again 12 years later. You make big decisions with life decisions on education and wanting to further advance. But we are those people of like, I don't want to just stay in one place. Like we are flight attendants together. We traveled a lot and we've been places and have done a lot in our 20s.
Yeah, we don't necessarily buy into the if you want it, you can't have it. We're always those people that are going to make something happen if we want it bad enough, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I would have never finished nursing school if I didn't, you know, fly back and forth every week last year. Like I had to either say, you know what, I'm defeated or I'm going to make this happen. What are the sacrifices I have to make that happen? I put a little money into it, got a little bit of scholarships.
Got a lot of PTSD.
Yeah. And
we were driving down to Ohio yesterday because there's 14 boxes of the flooring that we put in our home when we started remodeling it about a year and a half ago. And we have like one room left. And there's 14 boxes at a Home Depot about 3.5 hours from where we live.
Because it's sold out everywhere.
Everywhere. So we have to get it. So on the way there, I'm like, oh, this reminds me. This feels a lot like when we used to take you to the airport to be gone for 25 days in solitary nursing school confinement.
Yeah, but those, you know, the people say you can, you know, you can do anything. You can make anything happen. And some people look at the challenges and are like, no. Or some people are just like, I think that's too big of a sacrifice. And in the long run, for us, it was a great financial decision for, you know, me to finish my nursing. And not only that, but even emotionally and mentally for myself, because I would have had deep regrets and said, you know what, like I could have became a nurse. I could have finished, you know, I was a nurse as an LPN, but I could have finished to where I could open my scope of practice. I can move on to be a nurse practitioner. Mm-hmm. You know, which hopefully even that comes soon.
It's a stepping stone for sure.
But I could easily say, oh my gosh, nurse practitioner school is going to be $50,000. And I'm not going to, like, I don't want to pay that money. It's too much. I don't want to take a hit on the family. We're a family of 6. So,
If you
but
want it, though,
yeah, but if I want that and I'll do the risk versus benefit and I just say, you know what, this is worth it. Like, I know it's more time and effort, but I need to also, I instill into my family, I also need to instill into myself because I'm a pillar of my family and I need to make sure that I'm happy with what I'm doing in my life and my career. And ultimately that happiness bleeds onto your family. I want my kids to feel like they can grab their aspirations, that nothing's too big or too small. And, you'll make it work if you really want it.
absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than something that can be improved, but people are either too lazy or too fearful of making that change to make it better.
Yeah. And it was very fearful,
Right.
thinking about what could happen, what couldn't happen. The year I had to fly back and forth, like, it's a big deal. Like, your kids are here and, there's 4 of them with their dad and he's working. And will we have a sitter? Will my mother-in-law still be able to help,
Not only
the
that, but there
kids?
was the
And
threat of one of our daughters starting her period.
yeah.
And if anyone's a father out there having to go through that without a mother around, it's scary. So it was a ticking time bomb of the Big Red Panda. And if no one's seen that movie that just came out, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Really funny.
Oh, there is one thing worse than somebody that doesn't want to fix a problem because of fear or laziness.
What is that?
Somebody that just wants to complain and not do anything about it.
Oh, yeah, that's a big number one. If you want to sit there and complain about it, you better be willing to fix it or do something about it.
Absolutely.
And it better be in the most positive manner and not just saying, oh, I'm just going to shut this guy up, with my fist or anything like that.
What was I was listening to a podcast the other day. The quote was, anytime someone comes up to you, I think you had one the other day in the ER, where the nurse is like, oh, well, yeah, blah, 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 this and that. Well, go talk to them and make it happen. Oh, well, I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah, that really bugs me. If something's bugging you or, that a teammate's doing or a partner, you can always have that constructive, respectful conversation of like, hey, like, it's all about how you, present it to them, I saw this and I had learned about this in my school and, it's evidence-based practice. And if this helps you, like, I hope you use it. I just wanted to show you or teach you about it or
Well, you wake up every morning and you're in control of one thing,
yourself.
and you go to work. If management what was the issue for this particular, they didn't want to spend the time to fix it. What was the issue? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Well, let's say it was management related. So you go to work, you control yourself, you lead by example. Those people that follow you, because there are people that follow you, good or bad, are going to follow your example. And those people that follow those people are going to follow their example. And eventually you can change management from the ground up.
Yeah, that's how you change culture.
Ooh,
And,
culture. Don't get me started
environment.
on culture. So many things to get triggering me right now. Lift assist, culture. So many more podcasts to come. I want to thank everyone for listening. If you like it, do all those podcast things that promote it, follow it, rate it, review it. Go to our website. We've got stickers. You throw them on your station fridge, throw them on your friend's water bottle when they're not looking. Send us an email. We'll send you some stickers. If anyone has any comments, concerns, suggestions, corrections, because obviously we're not perfect,
Right.
feel free to reach out. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all the same, at The Rural Medic. Stay safe out there. Always seek to improve, not only yourself, the system you're within, but others as we achieve and strive for the perfect EMS system.
You're listening to the Rural Medic Podcast,